The morning started like every Thanksgiving for the past 15 years. Mom in the kitchen by 6 a.m., orchestrating the meal preparation with military precision while I chopped vegetables and arranged serving dishes. The familiar rhythm of holiday cooking felt comforting, even as I mentally prepared for the inevitable family conversations that would unfold throughout the day. Elena, can you check the turkey timer while I start the cranberry sauce? Mom called from the stovetop where 3 different pots demanded her attention. And remember to use the good china when you set the table. Aunt Carmen and Uncle Miguel are bringing their new neighbors. I want everything to look perfect. I adjusted the oven temperature and began laying out the formal place settings. Mom had been planning this Thanksgiving for weeks, excited to host extended family she hadn't seen since last Christmas. The guest list had grown to include several relatives visiting from Phoenix, plus some family friends who'd become part of our holiday tradition over the years. I'm so glad everyone can make it this year, Mom continued, stirring the cranberry mixture. It's been too long since we've had a proper family gathering. Carmen mentioned her neighbors are looking to move to our area. Apparently they're quite successful and interested in the local real estate market. The doorbell rang at precisely noon, and soon our modest living room filled with the warm chaos of family arrivals. Hugs, exclamations over how much the children had grown, and the ceremonial passing of homemade desserts created the familiar symphony of holiday gatherings. I helped hang coats and directed people toward the appetizers Mom had arranged in the dining room. Aunt Carmen arrived with her husband and a well-dressed couple in their 50s, the neighbors Mom had mentioned. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Richard and Patricia Hammond, Carmen announced. They just moved here from Denver where Richard had a very successful medical practice. Richard shook hands around the room with the confident demeanor of someone accustomed to social gatherings. Thank you for including us in your family celebration. Carmen has told us wonderful things about your community here. We're exploring the area for investment opportunities, Patricia added, accepting a glass of wine from Mom. The real estate market here seems quite robust compared to what we left behind in Colorado. As we settled into pre-dinner conversation, the topics naturally gravitated toward careers, recent achievements and local developments. Uncle Miguel shared updates about his accounting practice's expansion, while cousin Sandra described her recent promotion to regional sales manager at her pharmaceutical company. Mom beamed with pride as she facilitated introductions and highlighted family accomplishments. Miguel just hired 2 new associates this year, she explained to the Hammonds. And Sandra's territory now covers 3 states. She travels constantly but loves the challenge. The conversation turned to real estate when Richard mentioned their search for a permanent residence. We're looking at several neighborhoods, but the selection of quality properties seems limited. We're particularly interested in something with more space and privacy than typical suburban developments offer. The market here has definitely tightened up, Uncle Miguel agreed. Properties move quickly, especially anything in the premium range. You almost need an inside connection to find the really exceptional listings. Cousin Sandra nodded knowingly. I looked at upgrading to a larger house last year, but the competition was intense. Cash offers, bidding wars, it's challenging for regular buyers to compete with investors and people relocating from more expensive markets. Mom glanced toward me with a slightly apologetic expression. Elena's been dealing with some of those challenges too. She's still renting that small apartment downtown, haven't you, sweetheart? It's so difficult for young people to get established in real estate these days. I smiled and nodded while refilling water glasses. The market is certainly competitive. Exactly, Mom continued, turning back to the Hammonds. Even with a steady job, it's hard to save enough for a down payment when rent takes up so much of your income. Elena works in property management, but that doesn't necessarily translate to being able to afford property yourself. Patricia nodded sympathetically. We've heard similar stories from younger colleagues. The gap between rental costs and homeownership requirements seems to keep growing. Elena never really learned the investment side of things, Mom explained, her tone carrying the gentle concern of a parent who worries about their child's financial future. She's always been more focused on the day-to-day work rather than building long-term wealth. Aunt Carmen joined the conversation. It's smart to be cautious, though. I've seen too many people overextend themselves trying to jump into real estate before they're financially ready. Absolutely, Richard agreed. Property investment requires significant capital and financial sophistication. It's not something to approach casually. I excused myself to check on the turkey and escaped to the kitchen for a few minutes of quiet. The conversation wasn't malicious. Mom genuinely worried about my financial security, and the relatives were offering their perspective based on their own experiences. Still, there was something exhausting about being positioned as the family member who needed guidance and support. My phone vibrated with a text message. I glanced at the screen expecting holiday greetings from friends, but instead saw a message from Jennifer Walsh, the property manager I'd been working with for the past 8 months. Ms. Rodriguez, the final walkthrough is complete and all paperwork has been signed. The $2.8 million estate purchase is officially closed. When would you like to schedule the key transfer and property orientation? I stared at the message for a moment, then quickly typed back, Monday morning works well. Thank you for handling everything so smoothly. Another message appeared immediately. Congratulations on an exceptional acquisition. The estate is truly magnificent. Should I proceed with arranging the interior designer consultations you mentioned? Yes, please coordinate with the 3 firms we discussed. I'd like to see preliminary proposals by the end of next week. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and returned to the living room where the conversation had shifted to holiday travel plans and local restaurant recommendations. Mom caught my eye and smiled warmly, clearly pleased that the family gathering was proceeding smoothly. Elena, can you help me get everything to the table? I think we're ready to start serving. The next hour was devoted to the elaborate ritual of Thanksgiving dinner. Passing dishes, sharing gratitude and catching up on family news. The Hammonds proved to be engaging guests, asking thoughtful questions about local culture and sharing amusing stories from their relocation experience. During dessert, Richard returned to the topic of real estate. We've been working with several agents, but we're finding that the best properties seem to sell before they're even officially listed. There must be some network of serious buyers who get early access to premium listings. Uncle Miguel nodded. That's definitely true for high-end properties. The really exceptional estates often change hands through private sales or investor networks rather than traditional listings. We're looking in the $2.50 to $3 million range, Patricia explained. Something with character and privacy, ideally with some acreage. We found a beautiful estate last month, Spanish colonial architecture, mature landscaping, incredible mountain views, but it sold within days of coming on the market. Sandra leaned forward with interest. That sounds like the property that was featured in the lifestyle section of the newspaper a few weeks ago. Wasn't it that restored 1920s estate with the original tile work and courtyard gardens? Exactly. The listing description mentioned hand-painted ceiling beams and a wine cellar that was added during a renovation in the 1990s. It was absolutely perfect for what we're looking for. Mom looked puzzled. How much did you say properties like that cost? This particular one was listed at $2.8 million, Richard replied. Which is actually reasonable for that level of quality and location. In Denver, comparable properties were running $4 million or more. $2.8 million, Mom repeated slowly. I had no idea houses could cost that much around here. Patricia laughed gently. It's definitely an investment, but when you find the right property, the value tends to appreciate steadily. Real estate at that level is really about lifestyle and long-term wealth building. That's fascinating, Aunt Carmen said. I can't even imagine having that kind of money available for a house purchase. My phone buzzed again. This time the text was from my financial advisor. Elena, the wire transfer for the estate purchase has been confirmed. Your investment portfolio rebalancing is complete as well. Excellent timing on liquidating those tech stocks before the market dip. I shifted the phone to silent mode and focused on clearing dessert plates while the conversation continued around themes of luxury real estate and investment strategies. The buyers must have been incredibly well prepared financially, Sandra mused. Cash offers in that price range require serious liquidity. Probably investors or executives relocating from more expensive markets, Uncle Miguel suggested. People with established wealth who can move quickly when they find what they want. Richard nodded. Our agent mentioned that the buyers were represented by a high-end property management firm rather than working directly with a traditional realtor. That usually indicates sophisticated investors who understand the commercial aspects of luxury real estate. Mom looked thoughtful. Elena, Your company works with expensive properties sometimes, doesn't it? Do you ever see sales in that price range? Occasionally, I replied. The luxury market operates differently from typical residential sales. It must be interesting to see how the other half lives, Patricia commented. Even if you're just managing the properties professionally, being inside those homes must give you a perspective on what true wealth looks like. The architecture and craftsmanship are usually exceptional, I agreed. Mom turned to the Hammonds with renewed sympathy. I hope you find something suitable soon. It sounds like a very competitive market at that level. We're not giving up, Richard assured her. The right property will come along eventually. In the meantime, we're learning a lot about the local market and making connections with people who understand the area. As the afternoon progressed, the gathering naturally divided into smaller conversation groups. Some relatives gravitated toward the living room to watch football, while others remained at the dining table sharing family stories and catching up on personal news. I was refilling coffee cups when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jennifer Walsh's number, and I stepped into Mom's home office to take the call privately. Elena, I'm so sorry to bother you on Thanksgiving, but I wanted to personally congratulate you on the estate purchase. It's an absolutely stunning property. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm excited to finally have the keys. I also wanted to mention that I've already received 3 inquiries about the property from other potential buyers. Word travels fast in the luxury market. If you ever decide to sell, we could probably get significantly more than you paid. That's good to know, though I'm planning to make it my primary residence. Of course. I just wanted you to be aware of the market interest. Also, the interior designer from Morrison & Associates can meet with you Tuesday afternoon if that works with your schedule. Perfect. I'll confirm that appointment Monday morning. When I returned to the family gathering, the conversation had shifted to holiday traditions and childhood memories. The atmosphere was warm and relaxed, with multiple conversations happening simultaneously as people settled into post-dinner contentment. Around 4 o'clock, the Hammonds began making departure preparations. Patricia approached me while gathering her purse and coat. Elena, it was such a pleasure meeting you. Your mother mentioned you work in property management. If you ever hear about exceptional properties becoming available, we'd love to be considered as potential buyers. I'll certainly keep that in mind, I replied. Richard joined us, extending his business card. We're serious buyers with excellent financing already arranged. Sometimes word-of-mouth connections lead to opportunities that never reach the public market. I accepted his card politely. I understand the market can be challenging for buyers at your level. As the Hammonds said their final goodbyes, Mom walked them to the door with promises to stay in touch and offers to help them navigate the local community. Their departure seemed to signal the end of the formal gathering, though several relatives lingered for continued conversation and leftover distribution. While Mom packed containers of turkey and sides for various family members to take home, Aunt Carmen approached me in the kitchen. Elena, I've been thinking about what the Hammonds mentioned regarding property management firms handling luxury sales. Your company must have connections to that market. We work with various property types and price ranges, I confirmed. It must be educational to see how high-end real estate transactions work. Even if you're not personally buying at that level, the professional exposure probably gives you insights into investment strategies. Uncle Miguel joined the conversation. Carmen's right, working in that industry, even on the management side, must teach you about market trends and property values. It's definitely been a learning experience, I agreed. Your mother worries about you not building equity through homeownership, Carmen continued gently. But maybe your work situation gives you opportunities to understand real estate investment from a different angle. Before I could respond, Mom returned from the front door and immediately picked up the thread of conversation. What are you all discussing in here? We were just talking about Elena's work with property management, Uncle Miguel explained, wondering if her professional experience might open doors to investment opportunities down the road. Mom nodded thoughtfully. I hope so. I just worry that renting doesn't build any long-term security. Elena's always been practical about money, but sometimes being too cautious can prevent you from building real wealth. My phone rang again, Jennifer Walsh calling back. I glanced apologetically at the family group. I should take this quickly, it might be work-related. I stepped back into Mom's office and answered. Hi Jennifer. Elena, I forgot to mention earlier, the estate comes with a fully equipped guest house that could generate rental income if you're interested. Several executives in the area have expressed interest in short-term luxury accommodations for corporate retreats. That's an interesting possibility. Let's discuss the details when we meet Monday. Also, I wanted to confirm the timeline for the landscape renovation project you mentioned. The design team can start next week if you'd like to proceed. Yes, let's move forward with that. The property should be ready for the spring entertaining season. When I returned to the kitchen, the family conversation had shifted to practical topics: work schedules, holiday shopping plans, and coordination for Christmas celebrations. The warm, familiar rhythm of family interaction continued as people gradually prepared for departures. Sandra was the first to bring up real estate again. Mom, Elena, that estate the Hammonds mentioned sounds incredible. $2.8 million for a historic Spanish colonial with mountain views. That's the kind of property you see in magazines. It really does sound spectacular, Mom agreed. I hope they find something suitable. They seem like lovely people. Properties like that usually have interesting histories, Aunt Carmen added. Previous owners who were probably quite prominent in the community. Uncle Miguel nodded. At that price point, you're often buying a piece of local heritage along with the real estate. I was helping Mom load the dishwasher when my phone buzzed with one final text from Jennifer. Forgot to mention, the estate's previous owner left behind an extensive wine collection in the cellar. Estimated value around $50,000. I've arranged for an appraiser to catalog everything for insurance purposes. I quickly responded, "Thank you for handling those details. You've made this entire process seamless." As the remaining family members prepared to leave, Mom walked each group to the door with containers of leftovers and promises to call soon. The house gradually returned to quiet, with just the two of us remaining to tackle the post-dinner cleanup. That was wonderful, Mom said, surveying the dining room that would need to be restored to its normal configuration. Everyone seemed to really enjoy themselves, and the Hammonds were such gracious guests. I began clearing the remaining dishes while Mom started wrapping leftover food. The familiar routine of post-holiday cleanup felt meditative after the social energy of the afternoon. Elena, I hope I didn't embarrass you with my comments about your apartment situation, Mom said after a few minutes of companionable work. I know you're being smart about your finances. I just worry sometimes that you're being too conservative with investments. I understand your concern, I replied. You want to make sure I'm building financial security. Exactly. Especially when I see what people like the Hammonds can afford. That kind of lifestyle seems so far removed from what most of us will ever experience. I want you to have options as you get older. I nodded while loading wine glasses into the dishwasher. I've actually been exploring some investment opportunities recently. Really? That's wonderful. Real estate or stocks? A combination of both. My financial advisor has been helping me diversify my portfolio. Mom's face lit up with interest and relief. I'm so glad to hear that. I know you're cautious by nature, but sometimes you have to take calculated risks to build real wealth. As we finished the kitchen cleanup, I reflected on the day's conversations and the complexity of family relationships. Mom's concerns came from love and genuine worry about my future, even when her assumptions about my circumstances weren't entirely accurate. My phone remained silent for the rest of the evening, though I suspected Monday would bring a flurry of activity related to the estate purchase and the various projects I had planned for the property. Thank you for all your help today, Mom said as I prepared to leave. And I'm proud of you for thinking seriously about investments. Financial security is so important, especially for women building independent lives. I appreciate your support and guidance, I replied honestly. Family conversations like today help me think through these decisions. Driving home through the quiet Thanksgiving evening streets, I considered how to approach future family gatherings. The estate purchase would probably become public knowledge eventually through county records or local social networks, but I appreciated having the choice about when and how to share personal financial information. The conversation with the Hammonds had been particularly interesting. Their search for the exact property I just purchased created an amusing coincidence that highlighted how small the luxury real estate market really was in our area. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer as I pulled into my apartment complex. Elena, I just realized, weren't you planning to move into the estate before the holidays? We could expedite the key transfer to this weekend if you'd prefer not to wait until Monday. I replied, Monday is fine. I want to take time to plan the transition properly. Of course. Also, the security system installation is scheduled for Tuesday. The estate will be fully protected by the end of next week. As I unlocked my apartment door, I looked around the space that had been home for the past 3 years. Modest but comfortable, it had served its purpose during a period of careful financial planning and strategic investment building. In a few weeks, it would become part of my rental property portfolio while I settled into a very different kind of living situation. The contrast between my family's perception of my circumstances and the reality of my financial position wasn't something I felt compelled to correct immediately. Family relationships were complex enough without adding the dynamics that often accompanied significant wealth disparities. But I was grateful for Mom's concern and the relatives who had offered their perspectives throughout the day. Their love and support mattered more than whether they fully understood the details of my business activities or investment strategies. Monday would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight I was content to reflect on a successful Thanksgiving surrounded by family, even when their assumptions about my life were somewhat different from the reality.